But one afternoon, Mr. Watkins walked into my office. He was 89 years old. And he said, I want to volunteer. And I said, I actually do need someone. I need an instructor to take over a class. That particular instructor's ill. And so maybe you could take that class over for me and be an instructor. And I said, but what I'd really like to do is, may I see your resume? And he said, of course. And so he brought me his resume. I think he has 14 master's degrees in divinity and systematic theology, and I don't know what all. I just went, oh my gosh, your pedigree is incredible. And I said, okay, well, let's do that. Let's just start with that class. And I worried. He was so smart and such a gentleman, and 89 years old. And I worried that the students, who were usually younger, millennial age, the ones that are recovering from addiction, really would not relate to him. And their lives there would be no connection whatsoever. And so when he began to teach, I asked him how it's going. He said, he cried. He said, I love the students. I love them so much. Thank you for this opportunity. And so I thought, well, I'm going to see how the students feel about it. So I decided I'm going to ask a student and see how that class is going. Do they like the class? Keep it general. And so I did. I approached some students and I said, so how's that going? Do you like that class with Mr. Watkins? And everyone said, oh my gosh, Mrs. Taylor, we love him. He's the grandfather I never had. And he's everything to us. And they would get teary, and I thought, my goodness, this is incredible. So I watched his relationship with those students and how he impacted them with a moral code they'd never been introduced to, with a way of living a life they'd never been introduced to. And he fell in love with them, and they fell in love with him. And it was that way his whole time here. He was here till he was 97 years old. And he changed all of us with his tender love, his brilliant mind. He was sharp as a tack, and such a jokester. That generation, they're such jokesters, and we enjoyed him immensely. He brought a new facet to the mission that we simply did not have.
Well, many things I can say about this fine gentleman, but one of the things that really sticks out to me was the genuine love that he had, and how he just accepted you where you were. He spoke so many encouraging things into my life that I will cherish forever. He just was that kind of guy who would just say something and speak it, and you just believed him, and you knew that he meant it. And you can never replace that. And if there's one other thing I could say about him is he's a hero to me in many ways, but one other way is that he is the kind of guy in his 90s, late 90s, was still showing up to work every day. And that is something that inspires me to continue on the task ahead of me, to work, to fight the good fight, to do the work, whatever the Lord leads me to. Retirement is not an object I'm chasing after, but just continuing to work and see where God leads me.
Hi, my name is Alex Romero, and I'm the men's manager of the Drug and Alcohol Program at Faith City Mission. And I'm just here to tell you what the impact that Mr. Watkins had on my life. There will be two things that I will always remember what he said. First one was, you need 11 hugs a day to live a healthy life. Mm-hmm. And whenever in class, I had him in class, and whenever he finished out the class, he would always tell us that he loved us. And we knew he meant it, because when he said it, he always wept. And those are the two things that I'm going to remember about Mr. Watkins that I will cherish forever.
Hi, I'm Danita Morrow. I've been here almost 2 years. Mr. Watkins was here when I got here. He was 96 years old, and the thing that struck me first about him was he studied God's Word every day, and he loved it. But after I got to know him, what struck me was that he lived God's Word every day. Sometimes our circumstances here at the mission can be difficult. It just can be difficult, just the nature of what we do here. But Mr. Watkins loved everybody, staff, students, and guests. And he was the most non-judgmental person I've ever met in my life. And I can truly say it was an honor to know him and to watch him live God's Word.
Hello. So my name is Julie Ballard. I graduated from the RES program at Faith City Mission in March of this year. I was hired as an independent marketing consultant for the Capital Campaign, and so now I have the great opportunity and privilege of working alongside some amazing people here at Faith City Mission. While I was in the program, Mr. Watkins was instrumental in teaching me about humility and about the real love of Jesus. I so loved going to his classes, and I looked forward to it every single time he had a class, a meeting your needs class. I would go in and just glean from what he had to share. He reminded me so much of my grandfather, who used to tell me, "Julianne, you'll do right in life if you just read a Proverbs and a Psalms every day." And that's what my papa used to tell me. And Mr. Watkins just emulated that same spirit, that the word carries everything. The word goes before everything, and it encapsulates everything. And I've never met a man who loves people so freely as he loved us. I walked out of every single class of his weeping because of the stories that he was telling. I'm just so grateful for the time that I got to share with him. I got to see him in the hospital after his heart attack before he left for Dallas. And I just held his hand to my face and said, "Thank you for giving to the Lord. I am a life that was changed." And I was so grateful for that time I got to share with him before he left to go home to his maker. So that's what Mr. Watkins did for me.
Mr. Watkins was a mentor to me, a spiritual mentor. He was a man that was always the same. And whenever we came in, he showed us love from the time we walk in when we were really unlovable. And he just instilled in me a knowledge of knowing Jesus better than I've ever known him before. Before I got married, I went to him and asked for advice because the man had knowledge in that area because he had always had a good relationship with his wife, and he was just like a spiritual grandfather to me.
Hi, my name is Sydney Woolard, and I work here at Bay City Mission, but I used to be a student, and I went to Mr. Watkins' classes all year long. And how he impacted my life the most was he was just the man of love. He loved everyone, everybody with the most sincere heart. And I knew when I was going down to his class, I was going down to hear from Jesus. That was my thought process. That's what I knew, and that's what I loved. So that's how he most impacted my life, was love and the word of Jesus Christ.
Hello, I'm Johnny Harris of Faith City Mission. I'm fleet manager. Mr. Watkins to me was a very wonderful man, kind heart, full of love. He didn't have an enemy in the world. A man who was so true to God. It was remarkable. And that man knew nothing but love for his fellow man and for everyone around him. There's no words that can really explain Mr. Watkins. Only God can explain Mr. Watkins. This man lived Christ his whole life, and he died with Christ in his heart. And we'll all always love him and miss him very much. Mr. Watkins was a special man. In fact, I think he was put on this earth just for people to learn from him. A man who didn't have a bad thing about anybody or any religion, but had love and compassion for everyone that walked the face of God's earth.
I want to tell you a story about two men and how Faith City, through that man, helped the other man. The first man, the two men, their lives are so far apart from each other, and yet by some common supernatural force, they were brought together for the benefit of the second man. One man was filled with strength, love, wit, faith, wisdom, humor, hope, knowledge, and life, with a burning desire to teach and preach and live the Word of God. He was filled with fullness of the light of Jesus Christ. The other man was depleted of everything, had no virtues of life, a man who was physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually bankrupt. A man with no desire to live but lives today. A man unable to love but was loved. A man without hope but was not written off as hopeless. A man that was lost but was not abandoned. All of those things came to that second man through the efforts of the first man in Faith City Mission. The bankrupt man is every student that's walked in this place, including myself. The first man is Mr. Clayton Watkins. His love for me and his fellow man was immediate, unwavering, constant, and consistent. He came without a price tag or any conditions. Mr. Watkins was a teacher, a preacher, a spiritual advisor, and he was my friend. The stories he could tell, the wit and laughter we shared, the tears he shed and sorrows he endured in his life helped shape me and affirmed a solid foundation in my life that I can now continue to build upon that foundation and bring his legacy to fulfillment by sharing with others what he shared with me. I can only imagine if he could pull someone like me from what I would term the depths of hell, how many other people has he helped in his life? That I can only imagine. I cannot truly express in words what he did for me, but maybe through the receipt of those gifts and blessings and my acceptance of those, of what he gave to me, I can now offer to others and carry the legacy of Mr. Watkins.